All right, my friend, I hope you had no trouble at all to train that k-means model on the dataset in order to identify that optimal 5 number of clusters, which we figured out thanks to the elbow method. Because indeed, in order to do this, you just had to do exactly the same as what we did here inside this loop by just replacing that I number of clusters here, which is the iterative variable, by 5, because now we know that we want to build, train, and run the k-means algorithm to identify 5 clusters. And therefore here, we're simply going to take these 2 lines of code and we're gonna paste that right below in a new code cell to indeed train our k-means model to identify 5 clusters. All right? And we don't have to import the k-means class again because this was imported here, right here, and this cell was already executed. So no problem at all here. We can just call this class directly and input here, of course, not I clusters, but 5 clusters to identify. And same still, we use the k-means ++ init method to avoid the random initialization trap, and we keep a random state of 42 in order for us to have the same results displayed on our notebook. And now this line of code actually indeed trains the k-means model on the dataset to identify 5 clusters. But as I told you in the previous tutorial, we also want to do something else, which is to build that dependent variable finally, of which the values are, exactly these clusters from 1 to 5. So actually, the values of this dependent variable will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 will be, let's say cluster 1, 2 will be cluster 2, 3 will be cluster 3, 4 will be cluster 4, and 5 will be cluster 5. And each of these clusters will actually be a certain group of customers, because remember that our data set is composed of customers, which will actually be grouped or segmented into these clusters, these 5 clusters. And so there you go, that dependent variable which we're about to create will split through its values, all these customers into different groups. And so there you go, that's our next step here. How are we going to create that dependent variable? Well, I'm going to show you a little trick. If you look at the API of Scikit-learn for k-means, the k-means class, you will notice that there is actually a fit_predict method. And that fit_predict method not only trains your k-means model on the dataset, but also it returns exactly that dependent variable which we're about to create, with the 5 different values taken by that variable, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which of course correspond to these 5 different clusters containing different groups of customers. And in each group, the customers are grouped by similarities. They contain similar information in each group. And in the next step, when visualizing the clusters, you will perfectly understand what will be exactly this information. But I don't want to reveal them now. So we're just going to create that dependent variable for now. And since, as I've just told you, this fit_predict method returns that dependent variable, we're going to create a new variable here, which we're going to call y_k-means. Here with this line of code, calling the fit_predict method, we create indeed this dependent variable resulting from training our k-means algorithm with 5 clusters, to identify 5 clusters. Okay, so let's see if this works. Let's run this cell to train the k-means algorithm to identify 5 clusters, and all good. It was run properly. And now I'm just going to show you what we just created, y_k-means. So I'm going to input here y_k-means inside this print. There you go. Let's run it. And let's see what we created. And there you go. You can see now all the different clusters to which belongs each customer. So here you have to read it this way. The first customer belongs to cluster 3, so that's actually customer ID number 1. Customer ID number 1 belongs to cluster 3, and actually it belongs to cluster number 4 because this is only the index of the cluster. And remember that indexes in Python start from 0. So here, actually the numbers of the clusters are 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's be careful what we say with them. So let's do it again. Customer ID number 1 belongs to the 4th cluster. Then customer ID number 2 belongs to the 1st cluster. customer ID number 3 belongs to the 4th cluster, and etc. And the last customer ID belongs to, well, I have to go to the second page here. There you go. The customer ID number 200 belongs to the 3rd cluster, or cluster of index 2. All right. So there you go. That's the dependent variable that is created through the training of the K-means algorithm. And so now let's proceed to our last step. We're going to visualize the clusters on a 2D plot, where you're going to have on the x-axis, well, you know, the annual income. That's our first feature. And on the y-axis, the spending score. And we will see how our different customers, you know, the different customers of the mall were grouped into these clusters. And we're going to clearly see the different clusters and their centroids from 1 to 5. So as soon as you're ready, join me. We will do it together and we will enjoy the results together.